Hello, and welcome to another video from 3.5 Archive. Today, we're going to be doing another D&D 3.5 Prestige class review. This time we're going to be looking at the Death Delver Prestige class from the Heroes of Horror supplement. Death Delvers are characters that have had their brush with death and don't intend to have another one anytime soon. They would rather explore its mysteries and learn ways to avoid their ultimate fate for as long as possible. To become a Death Delver, you need to have 8 ranks in Concentration, 2 ranks in Heal, and 4 ranks in Knowledge Religion. You also need a base will save of +2 or higher, and you must have fallen below 0 hit points and lived to qualify as your near-death experience. The latter will happen to a lot of characters throughout their D&D careers, so you just need to worry about the ranks in Concentration and base will save for the most part. This Prestige class isn't geared toward any particular base class, but to get into it after level 5 right away, you'll need at least 1 level in a class with a good will save. Otherwise, you'll have to wait till after level 6 to take levels in it. Either way, this Prestige class's requirements are only moderately restrictive. The skill rank requirements are geared toward a cleric, but a wizard could also meet them fairly easily, as well as a ranger. You'll want good wisdom for the Death Delver's spellcasting anyway, so those classes feed into it. What do you get as a Death Delver? Well, you get a D8 hit die, 3/4 base attack bonus, good fortitude and will saves, and 2 plus intelligence modifiers skill points per level. So these will be the same stats as a cleric would have. You also get spellcasting based on your wisdom with 4 levels of spells and its own unique spell list. You can prepare any spells from your class spell list like a cleric does. You spend an hour a night contemplating death in order to prepare your spells, but resting doesn't affect whether or not you can prepare them, which is a nice touch, and can help if your dungeon master is the sort who likes to interrupt your rest with monster attacks. The spell list is pretty short, giving access to some typical cleric spells at roughly the same level you would normally get them. This isn't too impressive, and you could have just taken levels of cleric to get this. Or more levels of cleric, since you might already have some. And one of the example NPCs given for this Prestige class is a cleric who took levels in Death Delver. So let's look at this Prestige class's features and see if they make this Prestige class worth taking. At level 1, you get the ability to cast Death Watch at will as a swift action. For a spell that normally lasts 10 minutes per level, this isn't a huge difference, but being able to throw it on as a swift action is nice in case you forgot to cast it every so often. The information it gives you about creatures' hit points is sort of nice, but the number range is relatively narrow, and will only help you out if a creature has 3 or fewer hit points, so it won't be that helpful for directing your allies who to attack. That said, if a monster is at barely any hit points and the Dungeon Master is not giving you that information, this can be good for just any character that can land a simple hit, being able to put them down. Also at level 1, you gain the ability to Rebuke Undead. This uses your class level, not your character level, but existing cleric levels will stack with your levels in Death Delver, giving extra incentive to be a cleric coming into this Prestige class, even if the spellcasting structure doesn't. Rebuking Undead can be useful, and commanding them can be even more useful, allowing you to turn them against their controller. Not much more needs to be said here, but it does tie this class more closely to the cleric. At level 2, you get the Deadened Soul feature, making you immune to all fear effects. Fear is annoying and can ruin an entire combat encounter for you when you have to spend it running away, so this is a pretty solid defensive feature. Also at level 2, you get Spontaneous Casting, which works like a cleric's Spontaneous Casting, with the same division based on alignment. This is useful, but if you came into this Prestige class as a cleric, then you already have this ability. This just gives you that utility with your special Death Delver spellcasting, but this just makes the Death Delver's entire alternate spellcasting progression, as opposed to progressing an existing class, seem that much weirder. While it does make the Prestige class appeal to a wider variety of base classes, it is annoying to track 2 different spell lists, and this feature only highlights it, especially being an entire feature to itself at level 2, instead of something you get right away like regular clerics do. At level 3, you can cast Death Ward as a supernatural ability once per day on yourself or someone else, and it lasts 1 hour per Death Delver level. This is a lot better than 1 minute per level and should last you through most of the day of dungeon delving. You get more uses of it later on too, so you can protect your allies. Knowing when to cast Death Ward can be hard, so being able to throw it on at the start of the day is nice. This is a pretty good feature. At level 4, you get the Die Hard feat as a bonus feat without needing to meet the prerequisites. Die Hard is one of those feats where if you're getting use out of it, then you really already screwed up, but when you need it, it really does come in handy, and it definitely isn't a good enough feat to take normally for most characters, so getting it for free is useful and thematically fitting, but still nothing to write home about in terms of being an exceptional feature. At level 5, you gain a Fear Aura, You can emanate this aura once per day in a 30-foot radius for 1 round per Death Delver level, and enemies have to succeed on a will save against 10 plus your class level, plus your charisma modifier, or be panicked. Having an ongoing effect of a 4th level spell is fairly solid, and it's not one clerics normally get, although clerics have plenty of other options. This feature is a bit less thematically fitting, but is decently strong, even though a lot of enemies you face will be outright immune to fear, just like you are. At level 6, you get a 2nd use per day of Death Ward, so now you can protect another ally with it, such as a party member who doesn't have a very good Fortitude save. At level 7, you get another feature, Cheat Death. This allows you to automatically succeed on the Fortitude saves against dying automatically from massive damage or from a coup de grace attempt. Most Dungeon Masters aren't cruel enough to coup de grace a fallen character, and this is another feature that only comes up when you've already messed up very badly. And when it comes to death from massive damage, a lot of Dungeon Masters ignore that rule too, especially at epic levels, where the game even suggests in the epic level handbook that at very least modifying that rule is a good idea to avoid the game becoming a Russian roulette of natural ones on the saving throw to not immediately die from 50 or more damage, which is pretty common at epic levels, to be clear. So this feature is not going to come up much. It's cool, it's very thematically fitting, but could use some broader applications, such as being applicable against critical hits or something like that. At level 8, you get Mantle of Life. This lets you send a surge of confidence through your allies as a full round action to give all of them within 60 feet a +4 on will saves for 1 minute. This bonus is untyped, so it stacks with everything, and it seems like you can use this as many times per day as you want. That's great because it gives your party a huge boost to perhaps the most important saving throw. At level 9, you get a 3rd use per day of Death Ward, lasting 9 hours now in all cases, solidly protecting yourself and a couple party members from death effects. This is a pretty solid feature. Death effects show up a lot at higher levels, and while you usually will pass a save against them, it's the times that you don't that will end your character's adventuring career rather early, or cost the party 10 or 25,000 gold for resurrections. Finally, at level 10, you get 9 lives. Whenever you would be killed, even by something that would fully annihilate your body, such as a disintegrate spell, you're instead dropped to -9 hit points and use up one of your 9 extra lives. If you are immersed in lava or something, though, you will keep dying over and over and quickly use up all of your extra lives. That said, aside from that, this feature is great insurance against death and is worth roughly 225,000 gold pieces in terms of the cost saved in resurrection spells, at least if we're going by true resurrection. However, on the other hand, this feature doesn't really do anything unless you die, which is not something you generally want to happen. So if you are careful, as you should be, you won't get any use out of this feature at all. This is par for the course in this prestige class, and thematically this feature is very fitting and very cool, but generally speaking, you should focus on a character on what they can do, allowing them to avoid situations where they die in the first place. This isn't to say classes with protective abilities are worthless, as they definitely aren't, because no matter how well you play your character, there's going to be situations that come up where you're just not going to be ready to handle them, and your character very well may die. Even the best built or played characters can often end up in a situation where they're just killed even at high levels. The Death Delver does have a few useful features, but that overall is going to be the downfall of a prestige class like this. It's simply that the features are used reactively rather than proactively, and the reactiveness of them is against, dying or being close to death. So overall, this prestige class gets 4 stars for concept, but only 2 stars for execution. The long-lasting Death Ward is great, as is Mantle of Life, but the rest of the features are fairly mediocre. Even 9 lives, it is really cool, and it can save your life 9 times, but it just doesn't allow you to do very much. So we can say that that's maybe the third of the good prestige class features for the Death Delver. The spell casting is weird, and while again it does open the prestige class up to multiple base classes, it prevents you from getting higher level cleric spells as a cleric, making this prestige class a less tempting option for those characters in the first place. Yeah, if you're filling in the cleric slot as a member of the party, you really need to be casting those higher level cleric spells and contributing. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself using these protection against death features a lot more than you'll want to. How could this prestige class be improved? Well, if it is so geared toward clerics, then perhaps it could simply give improvements to existing spellcasting and have an alternate benefit for characters such as monks who want to enter the prestige class. Condensing it to 5 levels might help, as a lot of the features such as the Fear Aura just aren't very thematically fitting, even if they are quite strong. Yes, having conquered death giving you like an aura of fear could make sense from some angle, but it really doesn't fit the basic concept of this prestige class, where it's just a matter of you face death once and you've trained your body and mind and soul to avoid having to encounter it again. The fear aura honestly feels like they had 10 levels to fill with this prestige class, and they needed to come up with features to slot in there. Keeping the Death Sense, Deadened Soul, Death Ward, Cheat Death, Mantle of Life, and 9 Lives abilities could be condensed into 5 levels fairly well. Giving Cheat Death the chance to negate critical hits would make it actually useful instead of a rare edge case that will come up once or twice in an entire campaign, if even that. 9 Lives will always be a somewhat lackluster capstone, but putting at the end of a 5-level progression instead of a 10-level progression will make it a lot more tempting. As for the Die Hard feature, it could be thrown in there as well somewhere, but it would need to be modified to make it better, more fitting for someone who's truly plumbed the mysteries of death. Perhaps even an extended negative hit point range before the character dies could be a good feature here. Focusing too much on quote-unquote life-saving features is not a good idea though, as previously mentioned. So there are a lot of potential ways to fix this prestige class. As is, it is not completely terrible to take, but it is mediocre, and you are likely better off sticking with your base class, be that cleric, monk, ranger, or whatever else. I really wouldn't recommend taking levels in this unless you really want the 9 lives, but again, if you go there and start using those, you're going to blow through them pretty quickly if you start acting extra daring because of them. And the spellcasting progression you get just honestly neuters you completely in terms of being an effective cleric. So that will be about it for this D&D 3.5 Prestige class review. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and so on. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time here on 3.5 Archive.